مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. فقط في أمريكا يجي طالب أفغاني صغير السن ليدرس في أوج الاحتجاجات المناهضة لحرب فيتنام، ويقع في غرام البلاد ويصبح واحدا من أكثر دبلوماسيها احتراما وتكريما، بل ويرتقي في المناسب ليمثل أمريكا كسفير لها لدى الأمم المتحدة. كتبت روايات بمثل هذه الحبكات، ولكن في حالة زلمة خليلزاد هي قصة حقيقية جدا. يعود أصله إلى بلدة صغيرة في أفغانستان، وجاء إلى أمريكا ضمن برنامج للتبادل الطلابي في المرحلة الثانوية، وأصبح أكاديميا رائدا وخبيرا بالسياسات ومستشارا للحكومة ودبلوماسيا. شهد عن قرب بعضا من أهم السياسات وأكثرها إثارة للجدل في تاريخ أمريكا الحديث، بداية من تسليح الثوار الأفغان ضد الاتحاد السوفيتي خلال ولاية ريغان، وصولا إلى خوض الحرب ضد العراق خلال ولاية بوش. باعتباره شخص عاش في ظل ثقافات متعددة ورأى كيف تعامل السياسة في كل من أمريكا والعالم الإسلامي، قدم آراء عميقة ثمينة خلال عمله بالخدمة العامة. هل كان دوما على حق؟ هذا ما سنعرفه. لمناقشة التحديات الماضية والحالية التي تواجهها أمريكا في العالم الإسلامي، يسرني أن أرحب بالأكاديمي والدبلوماسي زلمة خليلزاد. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. I'm sitting here with my friend and colleague, Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad. Zal, welcome.
Well, it's great to be with you, Robert.
So, Zal, let's start with an easy question.
Yeah.
So, what's the most serious security problem facing America in the world today?
I think the most urgent security problem is the problem of terrorism, Islamic terrorism, and Daesh and other movement of that kind, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, and groups similar to them is the most urgent. But in the longer term, I think there is a range of issues. The world order is under pressure. There are some powers who would like to change the current order, rising of China, a Putin that wants to be more assertive of a sphere of influence. We have the problem of sustaining our role. We've got domestic issues in terms of having the resources that are necessary for looking after our national security, because domestic expenditure is rising, the economic growth is sluggish, debt is rising, and the national security account may come under pressure. And the whole system of that we have created post-World War II and post-Cold War is under pressure.
So that's a big set of issues.
Right.
In your view, when you look at the American national security establishment and the American discussion on these issues, do you think that we have both the will and the ability to address these issues?
We're very divided right now. We're divided on kind of what should our priorities be, and what should our role be, what should our strategy be, what should our plan be, and what resources should we devote. We are in an election year. You've seen inside the Republican Party as well as in the Democratic Party a very strong disagreement. My hope is that whoever is the next president can work on a bipartisan approach to develop a consensus or a near consensus, a bipartisan approach to an activist and strong U.S. role in the world, we have an indispensable role, in my view, in terms of shaping the world. And when we are together as Americans, we have a bipartisan approach. There's really hardly anything that we can't do. But if we withdraw from the world, if we are divided, send uncertain signals, that encourages the adversaries of the United States and the world order, and the world is much worse off, in my view.
So let me follow on this theme of withdrawal and ask you about what is called the Obama Doctrine.
Right.
In the Middle East, at least, there's I'd say three main elements to this. The idea that the Middle East matters less to America, the idea that America can't really solve whatever problems are there, and then the idea that our allies are as much a burden as they are an asset. Right. Do you think this set of ideas, which we've also heard from some candidates in different formulations, right, do you think this is an aberration, or do you think this is the new normal of American approach to policy in this part of the world?
Well, I will say two things about that. One is that we have periods of great exertion, and if you look at the record of U.S. foreign policy, and we've had a period of great exertion in the first decade of the 21st century after 9/11. And then typically periods of great exertion are followed by periods of withdrawal and a debate about how much should we be involved or not. I think what is needed is a steady U.S. role in the world that is based on objectives around which a consensus can be built, and a strategy in pursuing that or those objectives and plans and resources. And the second thing that I would say is that we don't have an agreed grand strategy, unfortunately, at the present time. And that's so important to develop so we can decide based on our grand strategy what are the priorities, what should we plan for, how much forces or capabilities do we need. But in my own judgment, three regions are critical. I disagree with the notion that the Middle East is not important. I think the Middle East remains one of the three critical regions of the world that the U.S. must remain engaged with and shape and affect, and that the other two besides the Middle East are Asia and Europe. And we have vital interests in that region of the world. I think I'm not fond of the pivot word to Asia. I think we need to pursue a balance of power approach to each of these regions, where we wouldn't want anyone, especially a hostile power, to dominate those regions, and would like to build institutions where conflicts can be avoided, where agreements can be pursued, but at the same time maintaining a good balance of power in each region is vital, and I think the U.S. has an indispensable role.
Well, let me ask you specifically then about the American role in the part of the world that you know so well, which is the Middle East. At least two of the countries in the Middle East, Iraq and Syria, seem to be falling apart. Right. So in your view, can they be put back together? Should they be put back together? And what role should America play in that overall process?
Sure. Well, the Middle East, especially the Muslim majority countries of the Middle East, are going through a civilizational level crisis, and at the present time there is also a geopolitical fight for the preeminence in that region. Iran has made more of an advance compared to the other two Muslim majority countries that are in competition with it, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And part of the turmoil is not only the politicization of ethnicities and sects, Shia, Sunni, that are contributing to the ongoing conflict in both of these countries, but also the geopolitical rivalry among these three. And our withdrawal or kind of decreased engagement only increased the competition among the three to fill the vacuum left behind by the United States, which has been at the expense of the Syrians and the Iraqis. So I believe that ultimately a settlement of these two countries would require not only internal understandings and agreements, a compact among the communities of the region, but also these regional powers. And we have a role in shaping those. I believe on whether they should remain one country or not. I think if they don't come to an agreement on a compact that gives ethnic groups and even sects great level of autonomy and power sharing at the center, the risk of disintegration or new countries emerging is high, because the borders, there is not a lot of attachment to the current borders, since these borders were not locally decided or regionally decided. These are imposed borders, the borders of Iraq and the borders of Syria by Britain and France. So some are questioning very forcefully these borders. So I think either the majority communities or the dominant communities need to share power and do federalism or even confederal arrangement if they want to keep the country together. Alternatively, I think disintegration is a live option.
And so America should play a role in helping to bring about these compacts.
I think America's diplomacy has a role, but diplomacy cannot succeed as military by itself cannot succeed. Diplomacy or politics by itself cannot succeed. So you need to have an integrated approach that can help with the balance of power. And the realities on the ground need to be shaped, but at the same time, ideas, engagement is important to play a role to catalyze agreements that could lead to national compacts.
You've had such a storied career already in American policy toward this part of the world. I want to ask some of the lessons that you may have drawn from some of the experiences that you had. There's a great national debate now which still is raging over the lessons of Iraq. Have we overlearned the lessons of Iraq, learned the wrong lessons? You were involved in Iraq 2003. Have we learned the right lessons?
I think we are overlearning the lessons. No doubt that we've made some mistakes in how we approached Iraq. Whatever you think of the invasion itself, we made our situation worse by some of the things we did and some of the things that we didn't. Unfortunately, the reaction is not to say, how should we do better if we have to do something like that, which happens rarely, but it sometimes becomes necessary to do. How to do it better is we won't do it again. And there is this great opposition now to any kind of involvement in nation building, what's called, or state building. But I ask my colleagues and friends in the American body politic writ large, that if there is a piece of real estate whose controlled by us or by friendly forces is important to solve a strategic problem, what do you prefer? How do you want to deal with this dilemma? I think it's better to help locals that are friendly to control that territory, and that means state building, helping them build their own forces and have the institutions of the state so that we don't police it constantly, because that's more expensive. That raises the prospects of getting entangled in a protracted occupation, which is very difficult to do. So therefore, I think we need to learn the right lessons. There are scenarios in which we would have to do things that are not the same as Iraq, and I wouldn't support doing the same as Iraq, maybe similar to, meaning one has to go in, take out the group or a regime, and help the locals put a new order that reflects the will of their people together.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk more about American foreign policy and how a young boy from Afghanistan rose to the top of that policy process. Dr. Zalmay Khalilzad, scholar, policy practitioner, diplomat, and envoy, has been at the heart of American foreign policy in the Middle East for 30 years. He served in the George W. Bush administration as ambassador to the United Nations, ambassador to Iraq, ambassador to Afghanistan, and in the White House, he served at the National Security Council as special assistant to the president and senior director for Southwest Asia, the Near East, and North African affairs. Previously, in the Reagan and George H.W. Bush administrations, he served in the State Department and the Pentagon. Zal, who I have known for 30 years, was born in Mazar-e-Sharif, and he grew up in Kabul, Afghanistan. He is currently the chairman of the board of Khalilzad Associates and first vice chairman and director at the American University of Afghanistan. He is the author of the just published memoir titled The Envoy, From Kabul to the White House, My Journey Through a Turbulent World. So let's ask, how does a young kid from Mazar-e-Sharif get to be America's ambassador to the United Nations?
Only in America
Only
can
in
something like this happen, that someone born in a remote part of Afghanistan, once a center of civilization hundreds of years ago, but now a backwater place, can come to the United States and have the opportunities that I have had and be trusted to represent the United States in war zones and in the United Nations. As America has been very good to me, and I'm grateful, and I always think of what can I do to pay back, to do what I can to help America. This is a unique place. That what I have gone through, what I have done, I could not do it even in many countries in Europe, for example, even leave alone from the region that where I was born, that you would have someone else from another place come and to have the opportunity that I've had. So I'm very grateful.
So do you ever think what would have happened to you if you hadn't become an exchange student in high school here in the States and you went to high school just only back in Afghanistan?
I might have been killed by now. Who knows? Afghanistan has gone through hell in the course of the last 35, 40 years. You know, was the Soviet invasion, then the Civil War after the Soviet withdrew, then the Talibanism and the Taliban period, and then post 9/11, what we done. So who knows? Would not have been probably a very happy ending for me if I had not come to the United States and had the opportunities that I have had.
So here in the States, you've been associated with Republican administrations.
Right.
I don't know if you're personally a conservative, but Republican administrations.
Right.
Why? What's the attraction?
Well, I think it happened that I used to be a Democrat initially when I left the University of Chicago and got my PhD and went to teach at Columbia University, my first job. And this was the late 70s. And I was quite shocked by the response of President Carter to developments around the world, and became quite excited and intrigued and attracted to what Ronald Reagan was pursuing. And that and the two presidents, how I felt the Carter administration has dealt with issues, and then the Reagan administration got me involved. I became very positive towards helping President Reagan, and I got the opportunity to work, as you said, in the State Department.
One of the early initiatives you were involved with was helping Afghan rebels, the Mujahideen, against the Soviets. This is another episode where people either learn lessons or overlearn lessons. What do you think the right lessons were from that experience?
Well, the big lesson is that when you become involved in something big, like taking on the Soviets in a war in Afghanistan, don't assume at the beginning that you know the end. because there are several outcomes that are possible, and keep an open mind and adapt. What we assumed at the beginning when I got into government was something reasonable but turned out to be wrong, which is that the Soviets would prevail in Afghanistan. That was the dominant assumption. And so we did not think about post-Soviet Afghanistan because we didn't believe there would be a post-Soviet Afghanistan. And therefore, the groups that we supported was not informed by the post-Soviet Afghanistan calculations.
Zal Khalilzad, thank you very much for joining me on Dakhil, Washington.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
بهذا نصل إلى نهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة، وخاصة حول مستقبل السياسة الأمريكية في الشرق الأوسط، أرجو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على عنوان البريد الإلكتروني التالي insidewashington@alhurra.com. معكم روبرت ساتلوف. شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.